Coffee is a big part of my day. Not only does it help me get through the morning, but I just really love good coffee. Trade is a subscription service that brings great coffee from indie roasters all over the country right to your door. Tell Trade what you like typically. Single origins, blends, dark or light roasts, or even how you make your coffee, and they'll recommend the right beans for you. Or you can choose from over 450 different coffees and build your own queue. Then you select how often you'd like your coffee delivered, whether that be 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. Shipping's always free. If you find that you have too many beans and you need to skip a delivery, you can do that. Running out sooner than you think and need an order sooner, you can do that as well. No charge. I've done it myself a couple times. It's great to know that I have that flexibility. Go to unitedwedrink.com/trade and get started with Trade and enjoy 30% off your first month. That's unitedwedrink.com/trade. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour, more like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. I am Mike Urevich, and I am watching a child freak out in his bed via, camera, and it is not fun.
It is not nice to say that about Tim. Calling Tim a child is just way over the line, Mike. It's too early in the show to be taking digs.
I apologize. I
am freaking out because I do not want to be bad. Yes, I'm not a child.
I am freaking out, man. With me, I can't remember if it was. I think it was Tim who said something on social media about how now we know how to pronounce Mike's last name. I say it at the beginning of every episode. Or someone said, now we know how to pronounce Mike's last name. Like, I say it every episode. But
yeah, I didn't make that. That wasn't me that made that comment.
Okay.
You were impressed that I knew how to pronounce your name the first time we met. Virtually.
But yeah, well then, whoever said that, okay. Kevin Abbott and Tim Johnson are here tonight.
My name is very easy to pronounce, I believe. Even though sometimes I do get a bot.
A bot.
If you can't say Tim Johnson, we got a whole other host of issues.
Tim Johansson? Johansson. Okay, enough of that. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We were originally intending on having a guest, but unfortunately, due to some personal issues, he had to cancel. We are rescheduling, and we'll get him on as soon as we can. So it was a very last minute thing. So I put out a call to action to our fan on Blue Sky, and actually some people responded asking, hey, what are some questions you would like to see us address? And one particular one that I got, I think is very relevant and something that we could definitely expand on. The question comes from a friend of the show, Steve. He's a friend, a longtime listener from the Philadelphia area. And he asks, when do you think tariffs will affect beer pricing? And I think, I didn't even get into what are we drinking. One episode.
Excited.
Yes, one episode of me not having to run the show, and I forget like how to fucking do it.
So, Mike, I'll jump in and talk about what I'm drinking, but I do want to say that we're really lucky that my dad is not on Blue Sky. Because if he were, we'd be doing an entire show about 80s territorial professional wrestling, Monty Python, and old episodes of Count Duckula. So we could have done all those things, but I think the tariff thing will work better for the United We Drink podcast. My drink so far this evening, I have several, is the Magnum Hop Bullet that I think Mike said he wasn't a big fan of because it was too malty. And I said, that sounds right up my alley. So this is an Imperial IPA in that big Sierra Nevada mix pack that I picked up at Total Wine and More. And I love this beer. I think it's great. I don't think every IPA should be this malty, but I'm glad that there are some IPAs that are this malty. I'm also glad that they featured Magnum hops, which no one uses for anything but bittering these days. So this is actually, of the beers in this pack, it's my favorite. There's Atomic, I think it's Atomic Torpedo, which I also like a lot. Another one of the Little Thing series, Rad Little Thing or Cool Little Thing, I can't remember which one, which I like, but I don't like it as much as this.
Yeah, I think Cosmic Little Thing was what was in the
Cosmic, yes, yeah.
And Hoptonite was, which is my favorite from that pack. I just think that it was a little too malty for my taste. Bad beer? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But it certainly reminded me of big Imperial IPAs from back in the day. Ones that I very much liked from that era. But my tastes have changed and evolved over time. Tim, what are you drinking?
I am sort of double fisting it tonight, because I have Shell's Northland Gold, a nice, I don't know, probably right around 5% lager from Shell's. I don't know if you're familiar with Shell's as a lager brewery. They're typically known for lagers. I think. This one is really good. I got a 12-pack of this stuff the other day because I just wanted something. The weather has sort of changed here to pretend to be false spring.
Oh, fake spring, yeah.
Yeah, I've been wanting a spring beer. And then I'm also drinking a Trail Magic Lime Margarita. THC seltzer as some research.
R&D, as they say.
Yes, exactly.
Have you tried the 10 milligram one of the margarita?
I have not. No.
They have a 5 and a 10. I mostly get the Trail Magic in the mixed 12 pack, which I like because there's a couple 3 milligrams, a couple 5 milligrams, and all the flavors are great. The mimosa is great. The cranberry, raspberry, whatever that one is really good. And I love the half and half as well as the margarita. But I picked up the 10 milligram margarita, and it's a little bit drier. There's a little bit less sweetness to it, which I really like. And I just really like everything from that company. I've been trying a lot more of the canned THC cocktails, and I haven't found a terrible one, but I feel like Trail Magic has been like my consistent favorite.
You know, the I won't name them because it might just be a batch issue, but the one that I've been consistently going with, I picked up a 6-pack recently, and it really tastes off. The typical flavors to me on it were straight like what they say on it. Really easy drinking. Barely taste any bit of like pot like taste. And this 6-pack that I have is very herbal and like just really tastes like I'm gnawing on a bag of grass, and not the one out front of my house, but like it's just not pleasant at all. And I need to try the Trail Magic. I've seen that at the store. So you guys have both. I think when we did the THC episode, you were both drinking Trail Magic stuff. So I definitely got to pick that up.
I mean, consistency is everything, and I can imagine it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. And there's not, there's regulation, but you can get around it, and you don't have, Anyway, the whole point is that I can see how people could be not mixing properly, not getting a consistent product. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I went on their website to see, like, because I remember Tim talking about how some places you need to have like the data available, and they only have like the data for like their most recent batch number, I guess. There's no other batch numbers listed on there, and it's not the one that I had, so I don't know. But what I am drinking tonight, I'm doing a kind of a I'm still in celebration mode from the Super Bowl. I have my last can of Blitz Vienna Lager from Sly Fox, who are from just outside of Philly. It's in Eagles colors, Kelly green and white, and a little bit of gray. I also have here from Victory, Tasty Cake Candy Cake Porter, which is if you're not familiar with Tasty Cake, they are a company that makes like pies and cupcakes and other type of stuff. I think a Hostess, but local to Philly, and peanut butter candy cakes are one of their things. And uh, I was able to find this locally, and Victory's from the Philly area, and it's really tasty. It's one of the better peanut butter beers that I've had. Not the best, but it really is good.
It's no crust.
It is no crust.
My dad was actually asking me, I think, if I remember the text message, I did Yards, a Yards beer for my
Yeah,
most
you
recent
did
Old Favorite
Brawler.
Friday. I don't think I ever talked to you about Yards. What do you think about that brewery?
I love Yards.
Yeah.
The Brawler is, I think, fantastic. The fact that there is a mild that they make year round. It was, I think, at one point one of their top selling beers. It's not anymore. Like they have their Philly Pale Ale is really nice. That's
I've
probably
got a
my
bottle.
favorite from the.
I've got a
It's
bottle at the
really
brewery.
Simcoe heavy, at least from what I recall from it, was very Simcoe heavy. And I love it. Yeah, Yards is a good traditional brewery from the Philly area that has been able to keep with some of their old school stuff while staying relevant with newer styles and trends as well. I mean, they are. I'll go out on a limb and say they are the biggest brewery in Philly proper. There's probably some in the Victory is definitely bigger than them in the area, but they're not in Philly proper.
Did I visit Yards with you?
No.
Okay.
You went to Yards when you were there for CBC.
Gotcha.
I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But you and I went to a brewery that is in the old Yards facility. Yards moved like probably 2016, 2017, somewhere around there, to a brand new facility a couple miles away. And another brewery called Mainstay took over their old spot. And you and I went there on our Saturday of just walking and drinking around like Center City in South Philly.
That was a good Saturday.
Yeah. I'm glad you even remember it.
I don't, but I just know it was good.
Well,
hey, Mike, how does a pirate order his sales?
what? You broke up a
Yards.
little bit there. All right. So let's get back to what I was prematurely jumping into. A question from friend of the show from the Philly area, Steve, talking about tariffs. This is definitely something that was on the radar to me back like in November when the election was over, because there was a lot of stuff being talked about on who's going to get tariffs and how much is going to get tariffs. And we are like, as of the recording of the show, they got postponed for 30 days, was it, Tim? Like China, Canada, and Mexico.
Mhm.
And it's what's the effective date? You were saying in text the other day.
The effective date was supposed to be, and I don't know where
Like
it's
March
at.
10th?
Shoot. Yeah, I had it. In fact, I just had it up, and then I don't know.
You were like, there's
Okay,
no way they're
so
going to ask me this information, so I'll just close
yeah,
this off.
yeah, yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I don't remember the effective date. It's coming up though.
So, there's a lot of stuff from those three countries that could highly impact beer in America. So let's talk a little bit. I think let's
March 12th.
March 12th. Okay, pretty close to what I was saying, but um, let's let's talk Mexico first because they're probably from the beer industry standpoint going to be the least effective. Their breweries, their beers will be highly affected, such as like Modelo, which is a big time seller. Their prices are going to be going up. A lot of all of the imports. Good luck finding a $4 Tecate in a little bit.
But quick question with that. Is Modelo being produced anywhere in the US right now, or is it a Mexican brand? I mean, does anyone know how that works? Because
Our,
I would imagine there's potentially breweries in the US producing Modelo, no?
as far as I'm aware right now, no. Modelo
Okay.
is still made all in Mexico.
Okay.
Now, because of antitrust and all that, like AB purchased Grupo Modelo a number of years ago, but U.S. antitrust wouldn't allow for them to be the owners of them for American sales. So that's why Constellation is the kind of de facto owner of Modelo, Corona, and everything associated with Grupo Modelo in America. They, as far as I can see, they do not produce any of that of Modelo or Corona here in the States. The Corona seltzer was being made in the States, but there was actually a lawsuit about that because Constellation created that brand on their own without Modelo's actual input on it. But I digress. Now, I did see something, I can't find it, that there was some talks of them looking at producing some of it in the country, but I haven't seen anything solid about that. And I'm sure that that's probably something that they are looking further into doing because it would be really the only way that they can like save themselves a bit. But I mean, even with that, the big issue will be price of materials. They start producing in the United States, they're going to still have to deal with the price of raw materials such as grain. Grain probably will be the biggest thing that will be impacted by that. But we get a lot of North American grain from Canada.
Yeah, but can prices too. I mean,
Yeah,
that's going to be
aluminum.
a major thing. Packaging is more expensive than raw materials to make beer. So
Yes,
that going
for
up
sure.
is really, really difficult, which I know I'm kind of jumping the gun talking about that stuff.
No,
But
by all means.
yeah.
Well, and that's a significant. There are tariffs being imposed on everything, but aluminum was a very specific tariff of 25%. And so that one is probably even going to be even. Not only are you right that it's a higher cost for the cans, but it's also going to be a higher increase than I think on everything else as well. And you know, because Trump did add a tariff to aluminum in his first term. He exempted Canada and Mexico on that aluminum tariff, and that was like I think like 18%. But right now we're still getting like 50% of the country's aluminum is coming from Canada.
and we've had shortages in the industry of aluminum that has that has caused price increases across the board on those already. Especially during the early days of COVID when everyone was packaging more, and we started seeing those shortages, and now those prices didn't really come down a whole lot after that. So now we're getting those prices are going to go up even more. I mean, we're lucky that we have our two main brands are printed cans that we have already had printed, and we have them in house, like the truckload of them. But I mean, for everything that we put in bright cans or the digitally printed cans, can't wait to see. And by can't wait, I don't want to see what those prices are going to go up to in the next month or two.
So I've gotten emails from, I believe, at least 5 suppliers that are just preemptive. Like, hey, just so you know, we're monitoring this. We're not sure exactly when these prices are going to go up, but there will be a price increase when these tariffs, are kick in, and they've been delayed and what have you. But the major things for us that I look at are grain and aluminum cans, and so I'm getting this on a regular basis, and I'm sure there's other companies that are going to be kicking these things in as well as more and more information comes out. There's a really good video there's a YouTube channel called Legal Eagle, and it's a lawyer that kind of breaks down just, I mean, that's not just politics stuff, but there's so much of it going on over the last several years that he focuses a lot on that. But it's a whole thing about how the Trump administration doesn't understand how tariffs work. And it's a brilliant watch if you don't understand how tariffs work. And I've actually watched it. I still don't kind of confidently feel like I can explain it. But at the
I've
end
watched
of the
that episode. Yeah.
have you actually watched that?
I'm a fan of Legal Eagle. Yeah.
Okay, so both
Yeah,
of you guys.
I watched that one as well. Yeah, we're all the same kind of nerds. Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that I find so interesting is that the idea that these countries pay for this, they don't. We do, right? Like either us as business owners and people in the industry, or we either take it on the chin, or we pass these prices and these costs on to the consumer.
And no one takes it on the chin. Like no business is ever going to be like, you know what? We'll just eat that cost. No one is especially something. Now, a couple percent maybe, but 20 to 25%, no way.
Yeah,
and the argument is, for those of you who have not done your own research, the thought is that by doing this, it incentivizes companies to buy domestically these things. But the problem is that we either do not make enough of that thing domestically to keep up with it, or it's not priced appropriate. It is already more expensive than the imported item. So it's damned if you do, if you damned if you don't.
Well, and that's a really good point. I mean, everything is more complex than we ever realize on the surface. But that's a very good example of grain. Some of the grains that come out of Canada are, even with the tariff, will still be cheaper than some American malts. But that doesn't mean the prices won't still go up, which doesn't mean that the prices of beer will go up. It's not going to make us buy that other malt. It's just going to make us spend more money that superficially we don't need to spend. It's a similar thing with aluminum cans. So when you make people spend more money for their raw ingredients, it doesn't necessarily change their buying habits. And even if it does, it doesn't bring the prices down of the goods that are maybe produced here in the US, or allow them to ramp up to make enough, because so much of production is being able to make enough of that thing. If you're making widgets, you can't just snap your fingers tomorrow and make 75% more widgets. right? You have to slowly ramp this up. And businesses that say in the US are making aluminum cans. Do you really think they're going to turn around and say, well, we're going to have this influx of business, so we're going to invest millions of dollars into infrastructure to triple and quadruple capacity when these tariffs might not last that long? When another administration come in and take those tariffs away? You're not just going to create new manufacturing out of thin air to compensate for what I need right now, or potentially what I need 4 years from now. It is mind-numbingly more complex than this, and people with a one-sided mind are not looking at it that way.
Well, an interesting thing, I can't remember where I saw it from because I've read a lot and watched a lot of videos about this, but I remember one particular one saying how like even if a new administration comes in, traditionally tariffs have always stuck around. Like even quote unquote bad tariffs are still practically still on the books, and they never really go away, depending on administration. So it's like this could be something that we are going to be stuck with for a long time, or practically ever. So even if a new administration comes in a few years, like there's no guarantee that that's going to fix these things.
I mean, I guess the argument is at some point this is like a trade war, and eventually they'll give some concessions, so they'll take the tariffs away. I mean, they don't have a lot of.
Typically, what happens is retaliatory tariffs from them,
because
from that trade partner.
Yeah, because we live in a global economy and a global world. I mean, this. I mean, we're going to go into much more deep territory here, but like we have to stop just thinking about like just us, because us is everyone. Us is 8 billion people. Us is not the people that live in this country, because no country is self-sufficient. No country can get all of its things 100% from itself. And the idea that we need to quote unquote win is preposterous. It's foolishness. It's playground childishness, and that's where we are. That's what I believe personally. Obviously, I just said that, but as a business owner that has to pay its employees, that has to charge a fair market price with a fair markup from what I produce something at, my prices have to go up, or my profitability has to go down, which puts my business in danger. And the stresses that these things put on American businesses is astronomical. I don't understand how these aren't part of that conversation when we're trying to be go USA and, America first. Well, American businesses are going to be suffering about this, or consumers, or both.
I think it's definitely going to be both, right? Because there is only so much price elasticity. And so, as much as you increase your prices to make up for that, there is a point where consumers will just stop buying. And so that becomes a challenge as well, because, I will stop buying if 4 packs of 16-ounce cans get up to $50, right? Like it will just eventually.
Yes,
There's
especially
a
product that is not a necessity, like beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I know that there's I mean the big talk is always about eggs, and like people are still having to buy eggs because to a lot of them that is a necessity to have in their homes. But like for something like beer, that is like a special thing that you don't need to live on. I know there's probably someone who's jokingly being like, "Speak for yourself," but like it's that's the type of stuff like that is going to put businesses under. Like farmers, I mean, The price of their eggs is not not the issue. It might be bird flu that's wiping out their product makers, but like a lot of those farmers are going to stick around through those price increases because they're still needed. A brewery who's has to up their price a couple bucks a six pack might not stick around because people are going to scoff at that.
Especially in a market where beer is struggling and other beverages are surging. Now, we're talking about grain and we're talking about cans. Well, THC beverages, seltzers, they're in cans too.
Yeah.
So prices I would imagine will go up, but not necessarily using malt. Um, there are, wine is way down, but using a lot of bottles and using grapes. uh, there is a competitive advantage if you are not being affected by these tariffs that could really shift the market or continue or to exacerbate a natural shift that's happening. And at the end of the day, I'm a selfish person in the fact that I want my brewery to succeed. It's how I make my living, it's how I feed my family. But I also know realistically, I'm not special. Like, if the beer industry suffers and I have to get out of the beer industry and find another way to make a living, but other people are prospering, I can't be the most selfish person in the room. That's fine. I want more people to prosper, even if I'm the person that kind of loses out in that equation. That's what's called being a decent person. Um, but if multiple businesses are suffering and the vast majority, 51, 60%, whatever, take a huge nosedive because of policies like this, we have to look at and see, is this actually good for us or bad for us? I don't know what that equation is yet. Unfortunately, we never know till years down the road how any of this stuff affected anybody. And then we do a post-mortem and say, oh, well, the beer industry contracted by 25% during this time because of malt and aluminum tariffs. And then we go, man, we really should have gone back and not voted for that guy. Well, we can't do that, right? We're just stuck with whatever happens to us.
But I think one other thing about this is it's going to affect the smaller businesses first, right?
Yeah.
Those without the purchasing power are going to be the ones that are going to be the most hit. I mean, we saw that during the pandemic. Larger breweries were able to snatch up cans and snatch up raw materials and things like that. And the little guys couldn't get that nearly as much. And I think you're going to see it kind of exacerbated to the point where, you know, because of just the economies of scale, a larger brewery may still be able to absorb some of that cost, whereas smaller breweries that are canning might get out of canning entirely.
Which
Now,
destroys an entire revenue stream.
Kevin, I have this question for you because you are a brewery that used to heavily bottle. Where were your bottles from? Because I
have
recall,
no idea.
I mean, we did so little bottling at the first brewery, but we would buy a couple pallets of bottles here and there. They're from Canada. They were made in Canada, so. And I recall one of the bigger bottle makers around at the time for craft brewing was a Canadian company. So I feel like even with bottles, like you're still going to probably see an increase in that price too, especially if they are from Canada.
I think the company, because you guys know how it is. Like I used to buy bottles from a company that bought bottles from 3 other different sources,
Yeah.
and then they provide them for you. So I believe it was an American company that I bought the bottles from, but I don't know honestly where they originated from. But
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a very
we are
good point.
the world's largest importer of glass bottles.
Okay.
We are the largest importer of glass bottles. We are getting them from Mexico, China, Italy, India, and Canada.
Okay.
That's good info.
I assumed that there was probably a big one from Europe that, like, because all those European breweries were probably buying from within the EU. But And Italy makes total sense for wine and all.
Yep. But yes, we are importing a ton of bottles. So yeah, to Kevin's point, there might be, you know, XYZ packaging company sells you those things, but you have no idea what the point of origin is. But I know, and a lot of the other places where, like for instance, at the distillery, all of our bottles came from China.
And more importantly, even from a broker like that, if that's the correct terminology, they are going to disperse those costs among all their bottles, right?
Yeah.
If they're smart, they're going to say, "Well, I've got 3 different places I get these bottles from. I get some from Hoboken, New Jersey, I get some from China, and I get some from Zimbabwe." And you're going to go, "Okay, well, I'm going to diffuse this price over all these to account for these tariffs. So even the people that are sourcing and getting most of their bottles from Hoboken, New Jersey are going to be paying a little bit more."
Yeah.
That's smart business, right? Because you get a chance to diffuse that price over, but it still increases the price for those small businesses. And Tim, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We hear over and over about how small business is like, the engine of the economy and all this stuff, but it is small business that suffers with every one of these things. It always is because, as you said, we don't have the buying power. We don't have the ability to gobble up extra inventory and extra things. Talking about bottles, I had providers of bottles. This has nothing to do with the pandemic, had nothing to do with tariffs, but uh, contacting me 5 years ago saying, Budweiser bought all the bottles. We don't have any bottles for you. Budweiser bought them. What do I do with that information? I have to go find a more expensive bottle somewhere else. And those are normal problems that everyone has to deal with if you own a business, a small business. I get it. But when these bigger issues trickle down to us, who are supposed to be the engine of the economy or the American dream, we can open our own brewery and build our own business, and we're the ones suffering and getting our asses kicked over this. Is that going to register to anybody?
I'm going to start a small business that manufactures bottles and sell them to you, Kevin. I feel that way I will be a successful small business owner.
I don't need them anymore. That's the thing. I do cans now. So you've already failed. You're out of business. Boom. Hey guys, I do have a quick question for you. I want to continue with this conversation, but I picked up the Lazy Dog recent, like the quarterly box, and I wanted to see there was a lot of like large breweries in this box, which is not normal for them. I've got Firestone Walker's cold IPA, which I know Mike loves that terminology, and I've got the brewery's red rye ale. Which one should I drink?
Firestone.
What do you think, Tim?
I was gonna go red rye.
Blend
Okay.
them.
Well, let's. Who's our fourth co-host that can break the tie?
The bear.
Oh, me.
Bear.
I'm gonna do the Starlight Room because we actually had folks from the brewery on the podcast at one point.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do that, and it's a red rye ale. I'm interested to see what this tastes like. But anyway, I will concede the floor.
Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Regularly. That's a hard word to say when you've had a couple beers. So like one of the names we have not really mentioned in this whole tariff thing is China. Now I feel like if this were 8 years ago, they would be a big deal in this conversation because so much stainless steel comes from China, and stainless steel goes into making those tanks and brew houses. A lot of so many fermenters and bright tanks are made in China, or at least like initially made and then maybe finished in America, or American companies that make fermenters are buying Chinese stainless steel and making them in America. But there isn't a whole lot of market for buying FVs and brew houses right now. So it's probably not as big of an issue from that. I mean, I know some people who are opening up new breweries, bless their souls, who have all bought on the secondary market. Right down the street, my local brew pub, who has expanded into a space right next door to them, bought a 5-barrel brew house and FVs from a brewery that closed in North Carolina, and they got it on the cheap. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. So, not really a big impact on Chinese stuff.
Well, so not entirely true. China still is the largest producer of aluminum in the world as well.
Okay. Oh, I stand
yeah,
corrected.
yeah. So it still will. Now we get most of ours from Canada, but if we have to start to find alternative sources, that's going to also become an issue. Or if
I mean,
other countries,
Canada and China are both big countries. They have all those aluminum trees there. So
And listen, Mike, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about the fact that there's a lot of stuff on the secondary market and new breweries can find stuff. But regardless of the realities of the craft beer market right now, the goal of any market is to grow. And people want to open up breweries and they want to buy fermenters in brew houses. And to cut off that chain or to make it prohibitively expensive to do that, I'm okay with it, because if we don't have 7 more breweries that open up in South Florida next week, it's going to be better for me. But you want to have the option to do that. And if you don't have the option to go and buy a new 60-barrel fermenter from China at a decent price that might have been the best option for your brewery, you're cutting off avenues of growth for existing breweries, and you're cutting off new businesses that might be successful, maybe not in Boca Raton, but in some other area of the country where they actually need a new brewery.
Del
well,
Boca Vista.
but also so in my current line of work, commercial kitchens, they're still opening up. That's still a ton of stainless. We're worried about those tariffs. So even if there's no new breweries, you need places to sell your beer.
Yeah.
And if it becomes so cost prohibitive to open up a new bar or restaurant, or to remodel a bar or restaurant,
Or breweries
or
that want to put a kitchen in.
yeah,
There's a lot of that
so,
going on.
yeah, and so it might people might not be buying tanks, but every time a restaurant closes down that sells your beer, you hope another one goes in its place. But if it becomes cost prohibitive and these restaurants sit empty, that becomes a challenge too, because you do need to sell your beer, not just at your tap room, out in district as well.
That's a great point. And
Yeah.
there are in my general area, there's a handful of restaurants that were consistent businesses that are sitting vacant right now, that no one's jumping into. And anything that makes it more difficult for them to do that is a bad omen for my brewery and other breweries like me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an idiot for saying what I said earlier. This sucks all around for all of these countries that are going to be hit hard with the tariffs. And who knows, with the way that things are going with our country's now relationship with European countries, the EU could get a big freaking tariff put on it, and then every bit of well, not every bit, but a lot of bit of Kevin's raw materials, then, because you guys get a lot of European malts, that'll get, I mean, we get a lot of European malts too, at Copper Point. But yeah, this could get worse.
Well, I think one of the things, and I think Tim has made some really, really good points. Mike, of course, you always make good points.
Oh,
I think
shucks.
I think what you guys in this conversation has shown is that the web is much more complex than even we understand. I mean, we do have a little bit of our finger on the pulse of our industries, but when Tim was mentioned about, restaurants have to open and sell their beer, of course they do. How was I not thinking about that? And what are the 14 or 15 other things that are going to affect our business, that are going to be affected by these tariffs, that are going to be detrimental to us? And are there any
There's parts and
positives?
draft system, like now that I'm thinking there's parts and draft systems
Oh yeah.
that come from China. There's so much like it
Oh,
bars, restaurants, every fucking bit of this.
it's insane how important we all are and everything is to everything else. And you cannot just sit down and quantify this and go, oh, I'm going to pay this much more for grain and I'm going to pay this much more for cans and I'm going to pass this price on to this. Well, there's going to be other things that are going to compound on us as well. And we don't necessarily know what those things are going to be until they're there. And it's going to be a stressor on small businesses, big businesses, and then the fucking consumer. At the end of the day, they are going to opt out of buying our product because they're not going to pay as Tim was talking about. There's a cap for all of us on what we're willing to pay for a 4-pack or a 6-pack of beer.
So I'm going to make a prediction, right? So we've talked about tariffs on China, on Canada, on Mexico, on probably the EU. My prediction: a whole new wave of Russian-style beers. You're going to have a Russian IPA. You're going to have a Russian Belgian strong. Like that's all going to be that because that's going to be probably the only country where we're not imposing a tariff on. So.
But what do they make?
Well, so they do have a lot of grain. They particularly like wheat there. I think steel is still one they're pretty big in. I don't know. Are beets from there?
Yes, yes, they are.
At one point, I felt like Tim was going to like just throw down as an authority on like the production of the Russian economy and what they're actually strong in, and it turns out he just threw out beets. So I'm not sure.
There's
No,
also
no. So
a large amount of beets are made in northeastern Pennsylvania by a farm called Schrute Farms. They're really it's a family run business up there. A lot of beets.
I think Russia's main exports are like petroleum products,
Hockey players.
oil, coal. We always talk about the Middle East being, a lot of the oil production is, but Russia, I think, exports quite a bit of crude oil.
And bears.
That's again Schrute Farms. It's bears, beets, Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica, yeah.
Well, Tim. Thank you. You are an authority on the Russian economy, and I don't know why.
And small Minnesota towns.
Of course. I mean, that goes without saying.
I have a lot of free time and I'm bored, so I read a lot.
You Wikipedia browse, like you just start on one thing and be like, oh, okay, let me follow the hyperlink on this word and read up about this, and then what's this on this hyperlink in there? Yes, yeah, I do. I do
every
that
Saturday morning until it's Saturday afternoon. Yeah, yeah, I do that.
Well, it's made you an educated person, and I think while we are still learning about this, I think we have a good grasp at some level on at least the complexity of this topic. And at this point, it's also fair to say we're not really sure what the results are going to be, but it doesn't seem good. I mean, is that fair to say? It doesn't seem good for us or the consumer.
Yeah, for an industry that already was having negative trends in a lot of places, even starting maybe before the pandemic, but since post-pandemic, seen a lot of negative trends. Th- these tariffs are going to impact thriving industries. Suffering industries are going to be, even hit even more like tenfold because they don't have that capital. They don't have those assets to be able to withstand this. When you're barely paying your bills in the first place, the last thing you need is for that bill to go up.
Well, friend of the show, Kelly Meyer, is going to be able to have a whole rash of episodes of how not to open a goddamn brewery based on these tariffs.
So let's shift gears a little bit and let's tackle a couple more of these questions that were actually proposed to us. I will state that a number of these came from Steve, who was the caveat for this particular for the tariff thing. But
Thanks, Steve.
there's one question that came from my wife. She wants to know if we successfully root out fascism, do you think Gen Z will start drinking again?
That's a loaded question. I hope so, and I hope so.
I'm just gonna say yes, simply for the sake that I want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I'll be the negative one here. No, because I don't think that they care about drinking to begin with, because a lot of them don't care about the fascism. That's not. I don't think that they were not drinking because of the threat of fascism. So I don't think that necessarily plays. If anything, this should cause them to drink. But they're apparently tougher and stronger in will than any of us.
I mean, I thought that the link was tenuous at best in the first place, but I was just trying to go with it.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking.
Yeah. Back to a question from Steve. Are there still practices or trends that were brought on because of COVID that are either good or bad for the beer industry or hospitality industry in general?
I can immediately think of one good, and that is we saw an increase in beer to go. We saw a lot of not just from breweries, but bars and restaurants. A lot of those temporary statutes that you saw going allowing beer to go ended up being permanent things, and so I think that certainly becomes one more revenue stream. And I know some places it's really prevalent already before COVID, but I think we saw a great increase in beer to go during that has stuck around.
Hey, I think that's a pretty good point. I feel like there are places now more so than before, way before. You see places doing to-go cocktails, like a bottle, like a 16-ounce bottle that has like two drinks in it or something like that. And that is stuck around. I was going to say that could be considered both a good and a bad for the beer industry is more of adding food into their places, because there were certain areas that were only allowed to open if they were serving food, and that caused some places to open up makeshift kitchens. Then they maybe expanded on that and created real kitchens and kept it going with having food menus. Those are good things for a brewery to keep people there longer, is by having food. It's pretty well known. But at the same time, it can be a bad thing because these people don't know how to run a restaurant. They didn't intend on running a restaurant. And now they are being forced to kind of, and it can lead to quality issues with food. It can lead to turnover in staff because people don't want to work for someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to food. And it can be a very good or bad thing depending on how you do it. You want to go and hire a good executive chef with experience to come in and run your place, you'll probably have a little bit of a better time than if you brewery owner who was a home brewer deciding I'm going to now bring a kitchen into my place and never done that before and you're going to manage it. That's could be some issues. So I would go with the trend of opening kitchens in breweries that already established breweries, not new places opening with them.
I don't have a third thing. You guys came up with two things that are relevant to this. And I applaud you both. And I give a small bow.
There's not anything that you guys implemented during COVID that you went, you know what, this is a good idea. We should have been doing this before.
No. No,
Wow.
I mean, we did see an uptick in package sales, as you talked about, but we did not see a sustained uptick in package sales. We already had a food truck outside that runs independently, and they did their own thing, and we did our own thing to talk to the two things that you guys both mentioned. But no, overall, it was a dead period of lost sales that we never recouped in any way, shape, or form, and didn't really change our business in anything but a negative way.
Okay. And then we got, what's the most exciting thing you think could be coming in beer in 2025?
Pass.
Strategery.
I really like this red rye ale from the brewery. It's really well made. I forgot how much I like rye and red ales, and I think a great thing that could be coming in the beer industry is to make more beers like this.
So
I
essentially,
was gonna say, no, go ahead, Mike.
no, I was going to say because we had you and I both had Ruthless Rye last year on here when Sierra Nevada put that out, right?
Yeah.
Make America Rye again.
Rye is a good brewer's grain. Yeah, and
It
this is
really
not
is.
this is not a hoppy beer. This is more of a kind of a malt red ale.
Okay.
Which so many styles that we just don't make anymore. If we're talking about like purely enjoyment, there's a lot of great styles that could be revamped and put out there that people might like rediscover and really enjoy because they don't exist anymore. There's definitely potential for that. But I don't know. I don't see a lot of positives in this industry. Maybe I'm a pessimist.
I don't know if it was this past year or 2023, but like Black IPA had a little bit of a renaissance for a bit. Like I saw a number of like bigger breweries, like what's her face's Firestone Walker brought Wookie Jack back for a little bit, and saw some more places doing those. On a much smaller scale, you see some places, especially like regional is not the right word for it, but breweries who might be big in their particular metropolitan area, doing a lot of English style beers, but specifically calling them pub ales. That seemed to be a name that worked instead of saying ESB or instead of mild, and it really helped market them better. So I think there's ways to bring back some of those styles if marketed properly. Tim, anything
I
that you
think
see?
in 2025, move over glitter beer. Time for rhinestone beer. I think we're gonna fully bedazzle the shit out of beer in 2025. Sequins, feathers, the whole thing. No.
You heard it here
Yeah.
first. When it's the biggest thing in the world on beer Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever the thing that people do now, X. It started here on United We Drink with Tim Johansson. That's how you pronounce that, right?
Yeah.
That's what you call a callback.
So mine is very practical, and it would be exciting for breweries, but it's not exciting for the consumer. That's positive growth. Just
Very practical. Very
Yes.
practical, Mike.
but that makes businesses very excited
Oh, it
is
does,
seeing
yes.
positive numbers instead of negatives.
I can talk from experience. In a time long ago when I saw positive growth, it was nice. I forgot what it feels like, but I remember it vaguely, and it was great.
I had a positive
I
growth, but my doctor says we should go ahead and get that thing lanced.
Well done.
the last question I have is actually something that I don't think that we can answer today, but it would be a good thing to write down and come back to on, if not the next episode, but a soon to be one, because I think that this is an awesome question and it really has nothing to do with beer. But if you could pick 5 charities that would help me feel more like a human being during this administration, what would they be? So this is a very trying to be positive type of thing, nothing involving beer. And I definitely want to put a pin in that and come back to that because I cannot name 5 charities. And I had this information prior to you guys hearing this, and I still couldn't come up with 5 just off the top of my head while doing bedtime routines with the boys. So we will come back to that one.
It's a great question.
Yeah. Let me. That is it for Q&A.
Okay, I have one final question, and it's specifically for Tim. This comes from a fan, a listener that some of you may know. He's my dad. You are from Minnesota. Do you have a memory of Mystery Science Theater 3000 as it was started in Minnesota by Joel Hodgson as like a local TV access? Do you have any recollection? I know you moved to Minnesota at some point, so maybe it was before you
Yeah.
lived there. But is there
It was
any draw of that or any ownership of that? Because that's one of the greatest TV shows of all time, and it's from the place that you live, and you talk about the state parks all the fucking time. So why don't you talk about Tom Servo and Crow?
yeah, it wasn't something that I grew up with. That I didn't move here until I was older. Um, I'm surprised it doesn't get talked about more in Minnesota circles, frankly, because there's nothing we love
I didn't
more.
know that it was a Minnesota product.
Yeah,
Originally.
it was like a local access show
Like
for
public
everything.
access TV for the
Like,
first season.
and so because boy, I don't know if you guys know, but Prince and Bob Dylan are from here. We very rarely talk about that. It never.
I knew Prince. I actually didn't know that Bob Dylan was.
Oh yeah, I knew about
Um,
Dylan. Yeah.
yeah. If there's one thing we like to do, it's brag. So we don't really talk about that show much, but I do appreciate the fact that it has those Minnesota roots, just because even I think the sense of humor kind of speaks to the sensibilities of this place, of where it's not too cruel, but it's wry and silly. So yeah, I love that show. I haven't watched it in a little while. I'm trying to think of what my favorite one is. Someone asked me that like a year ago, and I was like, how do you pick? I honestly don't know.
I would go with Space Mutiny. That's my favorite, or Manos to Hands of Fate, which is what everyone says. But
I was gonna
Space
say that one
Mutiny,
kind of feels obvious. Yeah.
look up Space Mutiny. It's one of the best episodes of all time. But I'm glad that you know Mystery Science Theater, even if it was not, as my dad had suspected, something you kind of grew up with and understood, because obviously you were a transplant. So
Yep. Yep. But I mean, I got into it in college. So it's definitely been something in my repertoire for quite some time.
Kevin, did we see Manos live? We saw a couple
we did we
live ones at like the local. It was like a simulcast at the local movie theater.
so that was that was a Riff Tracks,
Yes,
which
but
is several of the same guys that do Mystery Science Theater. We saw Santa Claus versus the Martians, which is
okay. Yes, yes.
absolutely brilliant. We saw a couple of them. I don't think we saw Manos, the Hands of Fate, which,
Okay,
if
I
you
know I have
don't know
seen the
Spanish,
Mystery
it's
Science
Hands, the
Theater
Hands
one.
of Fate. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know I have seen that. I'm not a huge fan of that. I've seen it here and there, and I used to like come across it as a young person on Comedy Central and watch it a bit. But I know I've seen Manos, and I always heard about like that is like one of the big fan favorites. But I couldn't remember. Yeah, Riff Tracks that was what it was. But yeah,
Pure
those were
brilliance. Pure brilliance. There's so many good episodes that you can go back and watch, and I think a lot of them are still on Netflix. I'm not sure, but if you are listening to this and you have never experienced Riff Tracks or Mystery Science Theater 3000, and you enjoy listening to us because you've come this far in this episode, you will love it. So just go find a random episode. Some of them are on YouTube, for crying out loud, and they're great. That's
There were two
was it
things
was that my
when
last
you
call?
said there were two things when you said Manos the hands, the hands thing. First of all,
Hands, the Hands of Fate.
I always thought about even as a little kid, I never understood why Speedy Gonzalez said "por qué" for why. I was like, you're just gonna say things like those are the only things you're gonna translate for us. But then also the one that has always bugged me, and I say it myself, which is chai tea, since chai literally translates to tea. So you're drinking tea.
well, ATM machine is
Well, yeah, that one.
automatic telling machine. That's
Oh, you don't want to put in your personal identification number there?
um I don't have any other questions here. Does anyone have anything else beverage related that you think that we should talk about?
I'm enjoying this.
All right. Well, let's head into last calls. The point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want. The only rules are that it is uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. Those are the three uns of last calls. So we'll start with Kevin.
Well, thank you, Mike. I have mentioned, I believe, in the past that I am a full-time student at Lynn University. It's a completely online degree in psychology with a minor in environmental justice that I'm taking. And unfortunately, I have had to take an algebra class. And that has been the most miserable experience of my life, with no hyperbole. It's terrible on a epic level for me, because I cannot wrap my brain around any of it, just any of it. When I was a senior in high school, or when I was in high school in general, I couldn't understand algebra. I had a difficult time with it, and taking college algebra has been just purely painful. I have 1 week left of this class. Excuse me. I have 1 week left of this class, and it will be in my rearview mirror. And I will be able to actually go back to taking psychology classes and criminal justice classes that actually have something to say are actually going to impact my life and be interesting in some way, shape, or form. So I'm just taking this time to say, fuck algebra. I don't like you. I don't understand you. And there are calculators online that show that I don't need you. So please stay away from me going forward. If I never see another algebra problem, X and Y and sines and logarithms and all this stuff for the next, I hope, 30 or so years of my life, it will be too soon.
Tim?
I it was really nice out today, right? So Minnesota, we haven't had a harsh winter with snow. I think at one point New Orleans had more snowfall in the winter than I've maybe only had to travel 3 times all winter. We've had bitter cold, and I think we had something like a 50-degree swing the other day. We've been getting up into the 50s instead of the fives, which has been really nice, and it's really made me crave a patio beer. We talk about shower beers, we talk about all these other beers. Patio beer. Oh, I cannot wait. At my own patio, and I did have some beers on it the other day, but to go like a patio, like in downtown Minneapolis, sitting out on the sidewalk, on a Sunday afternoon with the sun shining down. I am so ready for it. I'm so anxious and eager, and I know I'm gonna get screwed, and this is that fake spring, and then we're gonna go through another like 2 weeks of a high of 5 below. But this has given me a taste, and I miss it. And I know you guys get to have patio beers year round. I miss it. So, patio beers.
I will have something to say about that off air. Um, with everything that's fucking going on, it's hard to not get yourself riled up, get depressed, get just confused and scared. And we need to still remember, despite resisting or trying to do our best to fight for others and ourselves and all of this, that we need to take care of ourselves as well. And with that is trying to keep ourselves entertained and have some good times, whether that be hanging out with friends, family, listen to a podcast that you like, listen to music that you love, watch a TV show, watch a movie, things like that. With that in mind, I want to share some things that I've really enjoyed lately. Just a little bit of a rapid fire thing, just to maybe spark an interest and be like, oh yeah, I'll go check that out. First off, I want to say John Mulaney Presents Everybody's in LA is one of the most fantastic TV interview, late night show type of things that I've ever seen. I love it to death. I wish that it could be implemented in so much other stuff, but it is the right place, the right time, with the right people involved in it. Severance on Apple TV is absolutely fucking fantastic. It's one of the best shows out there today. Coming soon, as of, I think, yeah, by the time that this show comes out, Mulholland Drive from David Lynch, one of his most highly acclaimed movies that he's ever done, will be available for streaming. It hasn't been for a little while, but it's going to be available for streaming for a short period of time on Paramount. So if you have Paramount Plus and you've always wanted to kind of get into David Lynch stuff, Mulholland Drive is one of his best films. please go do watch that. It was also just a few days ago, Twin Peaks Day. That is February the 24th. Go watch Twin Peaks. It's, I think, still now, the first 2 seasons are still now on Tubi, which is free. But it's also on Netflix. And then the 3rd season, The Return, which is fan-fucking-tastic, is on Paramount. Those are just some amazing things that I have seen. But I've also gotten back into listening to some awesome music from my past. I've been really into old school Screamo, Seisha, Coden Armada, Envy, I Hate Myself, which is the name of a band, not just me saying something. But like, just go revisit old music that you really fucking love and that you really haven't listened to in a long time, and fall back in love with it again. Because we need to have feelings that are more than just numb. Because the more that the stuff that upsets us keeps on beating down on us, the more we become numb. And the more we just want to just sit around and not do anything about it. So go watch stuff, listen to stuff, hang out with people that make you feel something, that make you feel love, that make you feel excitement, that make you feel happy, make you feel angry. As long as you feel something, go out there and have feelings, and just remember to keep yourself alive through all of that. Kevin, do you want to plug anything?
Nope.
Tim?
Well, I just ate a really awesome kielbasa, so I think just kielbasa in general. I want to plug, if you've not had kielbasa in a while, go reintroduce yourself.
That's a plug I can get behind. Get some pierogies. I had pierogies last night, and some grilled onions, and have yourself a nice Polish evening. I would like to plug pierogies, just to bring it all together. For the show, if you want to follow us on social, we're at United We Drink on Blue Sky. We're at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. We're on Facebook as well. We're on all of the major podcast apps and services and all of that stuff. So listen to us on whichever podcast app you enjoy listening to shows on. If you would like to support the show, go to the website. I'll stop that. UnitedWeDrink.com, and check out the Brands We Love page. We have affiliate links there for some awesome stuff. You click on them, you buy something, and we get a little kickback for that. We also have our store, UnitedWeDrink.com/store, with shirts, buttons, stickers, and all of that other fun stuff. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another new episode, hopefully with a guest. We'll see. But other than that, cheers.
Cheers.